welcome to the Sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Legacy Open in Washington, D.C., part of the SCG Tour, brought to you by Ultimate Guard. Nick Miller alongside Lands aficionado Dave Long. How you doing, sir?
Good.
One of the best conversion rates on the SCG Tour, two-day open stats.
Right.
A lot of those with lands, and I keep mentioning that because you're not playing lands here this weekend.
Right, sort of a land strategy, but not lands.
Right, so we saw a similar build to this Turbo Death strategy win the Eternal Extravaganza by Ely Cassis a couple months back.
Right.
And you're no stranger to this archetype.
Yeah.
And you have chose to play this deck over lands.
Right.
So first of all, it has to be pretty good for you to put away that deck. Well, what about this deck draws you to this strategy?
One of the main things is basically every deck now has something like 3 surgical extractions on the board, which are obviously really, really good against lands. Whereas on the other hand, they basically do nothing against this deck. The other thing is Deathrite Shaman is absolutely everywhere, and it's another card that's good against lands. And sort of the decks that aren't playing Deathrite are generally combo. So there's not a lot that really makes me wish I was more on lands than this. Having 8 main deck discard spells and all the protective elements is really nice.
So this deck makes up for the format getting more aggressive against lands, whether they're targeting or not. The format itself just has a bunch of stuff that's going against lands, whereas this deck still has a fast way to make it 20/20, but a bunch of ways to protect it, and you just don't even care about the graveyard at all.
Exactly.
All right. So we have the discard package between Thoughtseize, Inquisition, and Duress, along with Gitaxian Probe, which just kind of filters your deck and allows you to get better Cabal therapy hits.
I don't have
no therapy, sorry.
Right, but it does let me, sort of like Infex, the information is really important. Like, do they have Plow? What are they on? When do I go for it? The information is really valuable.
Right, and that's really important with this deck because you have a lot of things like Pithing Needle and Sorcerer's Spyglass, so you're trying to shut down certain cards that could keep you from doing your thing.
Right, exactly.
All right, talk about Sorcerer's Spyglass. This is a card that not a lot of buzz happened when this card came out, but we've seen it pop up in like the Eldrazi decks, even in vintage shops and stuff like that too.
Yeah, so here it's basically like the 5th Pithing Needle. There's one more in the board, so 3 of these in a Spyglass main, 1 in the Pithing Needle in the board, and you can power it out with the fast mana, things like Lotus Petal and Spirit Guide, and then name a fetch land, so you can totally shut people down that way. And again, the information is really valuable.
Right. So not only do you get to name something, but you do get to look at their hand, sort of like a Taxian Probe.
Exactly.
Which gives you more information for playing your deck.
Right.
So the rest of the deck is the, the Thespian Stage Dark Depths combo along with Vampire Hexmage, but you also have this land package moving alongside of that. So we've got Crop Rotation, no stranger to that from lands, but you also have Into the North and Living Wish. Go over what both of these cards really do. Right.
So Living Wish is one of the cards that a lot of times isn't in this deck. Ely Cassis had it, and it's really powerful where, looking at the board, one of the main things you can get is Sylvan Safekeeper. So it can either be a Depths or a Stage, or it can be a protective element, or even something like Reclamation Sage or Fairy Macabre for sort of particular matchups. So it's just much more flexible than Sylvan Scrying. And I mean, sort of looking at the deck, there aren't that many really good utility lands like you have in lands. So something like Sylvan Scrying, 90% of the time it's just going to be a Depths or a Stage, so Living Wish is very similar.
Okay. And Into the North, you're just basically getting Dark Depths most of the time?
Yeah, the vast majority. There's also a snow coverage of each basic, so you can use it as sort of a rampant growth. But generally it's Depths.
Okay. So you don't have the library of lands as you do in lands, but you do have some tools here. You have Ghost Quarter, because I assume you're naming Wasteland a lot with Pithing Needle.
Right.
And then you have Urborg, which allows you to just do these crazy busted things with Vampire Hexmage.
Yeah, so you can like turn 2 it or even turn 1 it with a petal or 2 petals.
Then the other 2 here, talk about Bojuka Bog and the Sajiri Step here. What roles are these cards playing?
Yeah, so the Bog is just graveyard decks, things like Reanimator or lands. The Step is really great to get through blockers, so things like a bunch of Flicker Wisp out of TNT or Baleful Strixes. It also protects against things like Plow or Submerge. So the protection's really nice. That's one that you definitely want.
Okay. Were there any lands you tried to get into this deck that didn't quite work, or you've been kind of looking at to put into the deck going forward?
Yeah, there's an Arbor in the board, which is really important for Diabolic Edicts, basically. I cut the second Ghost Quarter. There used to be a second one in the board, and I found I just didn't really want to wish for it that often.
Yeah, I've seen Dried Arbor pop up in a few of the lands decks as well this weekend.
Right.
People know that the 4-color control decks have Diabolic Edict to fight the lands deck as well. You have to have a way to get around that.
Yeah, that's another thing that's nice about Sylvan Safekeeper is it also protects against Edict because while it can't get protection, it can just die. So it's a creature, which is really nice.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. You have a Safekeeper in the main deck as well, right?
2 in the main.
Yeah, and then you have the extra in the board that you can wish for.
Exactly.
On top of that, rounding out the decks, just the fast mana, Elvish Spirit Guide, and Lotus Petal, which just, you want to do this as fast as possible?
Yeah, so I have fewer of those than most. I have 6 of those pieces as opposed to 8. I just found I didn't really want to jam. I didn't want to draw like 3 of those effects. I wanted to draw like 1 every game or some smaller number.
And that allows you to open up some space for what cards kind of moved into those slots?
Basically fetch lands, actually. I just found I drew too many hands that would be like Petal, Into the North, and these things where I'm like wasting my petals to just get permanent mana sources.
Sure.
So if that gets countered, it's really bad.
All right, take us through the sideboard here, because we have a lot of the wish targets. It looks like we already went over, you have an extra stage, an extra depths, that kind of thing. You mentioned Dried Arbor, but you also have an Orborg hanging out here to go along with the extra Safekeeper, Fair Macabre, and the Reclamation Sage.
Yeah, so the Urborg, well, I guess I could tutor for it with Living Wish. It's really, what I found is I want a land that can go into the main deck when I want to cut a lot of the utility lands. So like Bog comes out against the vast majority of decks, and Sajiri Step comes out a lot. Same thing, Ghost Quarter, like against a non-wasteland deck, would come out, or a non-Karakas deck. So because of that, I wanted a land where I could supplement because I'm trimming lands, otherwise the land count falls too much.
So you just need an extra land that can actually produce mana.
Yeah, and it's the best land against combo, just because it's the best chance of a turn 2. So that's why it's that one as opposed to something else.
And that's one reason you picked this deck up over lands for the weekend. Has a better combo matchup in general than lands.
So you can imagine something like Steeg and Show versus lands. I can make the combo much faster. I also have 8 main deck discard spells and 5 Pithing Needles between the main and the board. So that matchup gets so much better.
Okay. Other cards in the sideboard, you got 3 Abrupt Decay and some Surgicals of your own.
Yeah.
Fighting the usual suspects.
Right, so the decays are things like D&T and Delver, things with a lot of creatures, just to slow them down.
Okay. And then the last couple cards, you have the other Pithing Needle, which you mentioned, the Karakas. But this one right here, Steal Resolve. We don't see a lot of this card.
Yeah, that one was on camera.
Yeah, we did get it round 2 or 3.
Something like that, yeah.
And this is coming in just as another way to protect your Merit Lage.
Yeah, so it was originally the 4th Safekeeper, but I found that it was weak to things like Needle and Phyrexian Revoker. So I kind of wanted a functional 4th Sylvan Safekeeper, but it's not named Sylvan Safekeeper.
Okay. All right, so where do you see the format of Legacy going right now? There's a lot of talk about Deathrite Shaman. There's the 4-color control pile decks. Do you see this as the future of the lands decks?
I think lands is definitely a more well-rounded deck. Like this deck is really capitalizing the fact that no one's playing white at the moment. If we see a resurgence where instead of everyone playing Grixis, everyone's playing Esper, I wouldn't want to be playing this deck.
Okay.
So I think as things move around, this will fade and lands will come back, and I think it's more like that.
All right. Well, the deck looks really cool. There's been a lot of innovation to this type of deck. We've seen it around for a while, but as usual, you have some specific tech coming into the weekend. So
yeah. It's close to Ely's, but then there's probably something like 10 cards different.
All right, Dave, well, thanks for joining me here in the sideboard. Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all week long for the action here in Washington, D.C.